Solution video for United States Presidents version 1. Step 1, open the file, no points possible. Step 2, change the font of the body text to century 12 points and change the spacing after to 6 points. So I'm starting from the solution file. So what I do when marking your exam is I look at the normal style and I check whether you've changed it to century 12 points, spacing after 6 points. If the body text was not changed using the normal style, there were no marks given, as you know and as you were duly warned about. The next step is, with the insertion point located at the end of the paragraph, Office of United States President, insert a blank page, and then create the first page as in the downloaded example. So the downloaded example obviously looks like this. Use direct formatting for the formatting of the text. So what you needed to do was to vertically and horizontally center the text, which means that for vertically centering, you needed to add a section break. So here is the section break. Titled 28 points, top and bottom border of half a point. So I will check that here. And the border starts at 1 centimeter, so a left indent of 1 centimeter, and end at 15 centimeters, so that's a right indent of 1 centimeter. So how was this marked? So no section, or if multiple pages in the first section lost you 4 points. If you do have a section but it's not vertically centered, or if all of your sections are vertically centered, then you also lost 4 points. 3 points for top and bottom border, 2 for the left and right indents. And if you failed to add a paragraph or line break, both were possible after off, then you lost 1 mark. So many students did this. So many students had the Office of United and then States President on the next line. The next step is make first level titles and second level titles. So first level titles needed to be century 16 points, spacing before and after 12. Second level, century 12 points, color automatic, bold. So what I do is I check the navigation pane. So as you know, you can check the navigation pane in the View tab. So in here I see that all first level titles have been nicely given heading 1, and the second level titles have been given heading 2. Next thing I need to do is hover over the styles and see, okay, font is 16 points. The font itself does not need to be mentioned because the heading 1 will always adjust to the normal style, and as normal style has been nicely changed, if it just says font 16 points, then that means that it uses the font of the normal style. So font 16 points, spacing before and after 12, that's perfect. I hover over heading 2 and I see there that it's bold. That was the only change that you needed to make. So that's 4 marks for both levels. If the formatting was not done in the style, then there were no marks given. Apply numbers to the first level titles only. This was a little bit tricky. So no marks given if you did not use a multi-level list. That means if you used this one to set the number, then there were no marks given, as this is not efficient and does not guarantee consistent numbering throughout your document. So as you know, you needed to create a multi-level list. But what was tricky about this is that so very few people did create a multi-level list, but the ones that did failed to change the heading 2. So it's not because heading 2 doesn't need a number that you do not need to change heading 2, because So what you learned is that you first apply any of the library lists that has styles associated, so like this, and that you then go and change it. So if you change this to a Roman number and nicely change the setting to, if I'm not mistaken, 1 centimeter, let me just check. Multi-level list, yes, 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter, here it is. So wrong number format. So if you nicely change this to 1 centimeter, if you left this like this, or even left it like this, then you still have an indented heading 2. So what you needed to do is set this obviously to 0, and this would be a correct multi-level list. So this is what I check. I'm just going to do Control Z to go back to the correct solution. So one of the first things that I do is just reapply heading 1 and reapply heading 2. If anything changes, then there's either something wrong with the numbering or with the settings in the style. So 6 marks for the multi-level list. If you did create a multi-level list but only got the first level right, then you still got 3 marks. So with the insertion point located before the paragraph 1 facts and trivia, you needed to insert a new blank page, so a page break or a section break. Both were possible considering the footer in step 11, and we'll get there in a minute. So what you needed to do in the new blank page was create the title table of contents as you were taught in our course material. So what we need to avoid is for it to appear in the actual table of contents. So what I do is I update the field, update entire table. If it appears here, then there were no marks given. So you needed to create a new style and make sure that this was not shown in the table of contents. Check the syllabus if you don't know how to do this. So that was, if I'm not mistaken, 4 marks for that. Yes, indeed. The next step was to insert a custom table of contents with the format from template. So I know what these formats look like. So I know that this is the from template. If you chose a different format, then you lost, yeah, it's only 2 marks. Then you lost all marks for this step. Also, if you failed to leave out the second level titles, or if they reappeared with the update field command, then there were no marks given for this step. So the next step was 6 marks, was to modify the table of contents in the TOC 1 style, obviously. So text at 1 centimeter, page number at 10 centimeters, and no leader for the page number. So what I check is I apply TOC 1 and see if anything shifts. What I check is this: is there a hanging indent here instead of a tab, like you learned? Was the page number tab changed here, and is it still a right tab instead of a left tab? And then by applying table of contents 1, then I already know that the leader was taken out of the right aligned page number tab. So this is all I needed to check to see if this was done correctly. So there is no more tab here. It's been replaced by a hanging indent. There is a right tab here for the page number, and when I reapply TOC 1, then a leader does not appear, so it's been nicely taken out of the tab dialog box in the style, as you can see here. Next step, create a footer, like in the downloaded example. No footer on the title page and table of contents page. We needed the page number and the total number of pages, and the font size of the footer needed to be 10 points. So what do I check? There's a few things that I check here. So first, obviously, I check if there is no footer on the title page and on the table of contents page. The first one should be here. Then if your table of contents was put in a different section, like it is in my case, so I have a section break here, then what I needed to do was to make sure that the link to the previous section was cut. so by deactivating this link to previous. If your table of contents was not in a separate section and you had a page break here, then you could just have a checked different first page, which means that the first page of your section would not have a footer. The next thing I check is, are both of these numbers fields? So I can see that because they're slightly more grey. And the next thing I check is there not an extra blank paragraph here? Because if there is, then that means that the page number was not inserted using the current position. And the final thing I check is I reapply the footer to check if the font size was set in the style of the footer. So if this changes at all when I apply the footer style, then I know that the font size was not set in this style. How is this graded? So you lost 4 out of 6 points if you had a footer on your top page or title page. If you have this extra blank paragraph, you lost 3 marks. If you didn't have the total number of pages, you lost 2 marks. And if the font size was not changed in the style, you lost 3 marks. Next step was that bulleted list for the presidents. So there's a few things you needed to do. So you needed to select all of this text about the presidents and change it into a bulleted list with the text set at 0.5 centimeter. So you needed to apply bullets, and then using direct formatting set a hanging indent to 0.5 centimeter. That was 4 marks if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so all or nothing. The next step was a new line after every president's name. So as you know, you insert a new line. This is a line break. By using Shift Enter. And we need a line break here to avoid the spacing after to be added. And spacing after is added after paragraphs. So as long as we do not leave the paragraph and just go to a new line, the space is not added. So a line break. And that was 4 marks to add all of these line breaks. And then the next step was to change the formatting of this one and create a new style and apply it to all of the presidents' names. And to be able to do that, this new style needed to be either a linked style or a character style, because if it was a paragraph style, obviously it would have been applied to the entire paragraph. So if few students tried to solve this so they created a paragraph style, they didn't realize that they needed to create a character style, and they would then apply the entire paragraph style to the entire paragraph, obviously, because you can't do it any different way. And then what they did was then select this and just change the formatting back manually. Obviously I saw that, and that meant no marks given for this particular step. So 5 marks for the paragraph style. And if you did add if you did not replace, the paragraph breaks here by line breaks, then you could use a paragraph style here, but that wouldn't be fair to the other students. So you'd still lost, if I'm not mistaken, 4 marks if you have a paragraph style and got away with it because you did not have the line breaks in step 13. The next step was the APA style bibliography, which we didn't really cover explicitly in class, but it was in your course material because it's very important for the bachelor paper and for many papers that you'll be writing still. So what you needed to do was go to the references tab and make sure that you had the sources here. So you added the 2 sources, new source, or we can just edit the source so that you put everything in the correct fields. And after doing that you inserted a bibliography using these sources. automatically your title by bibliography is then added, and if you've done the numbering correctly, the number would have been added correctly as well. So that was 5 marks. And then the final step was to replace, so you had a list of email addresses here, was to replace all the paragraph breaks with semicolon spaces and spaces. So change all email addresses at the end of the document so that they are separated by a semicolon followed by a space. And this, of course, needed to be done via the replace command. So first you had to select all email addresses, then replace, find all paragraph marks, and replace them with semicolon space. So you needed to select, obviously, because if you didn't select, then the whole of your document would have been, all the paragraph marks in your document would have been replaced by semicolons. One student actually had the patience to manually replace all the paragraph breaks with semicolons, and how could I tell that she did it or he did it manually was because all of these were hyperlinks. So if you change this manually, then all of these become hyperlinks, whereas if you do it using the replace command, they do not become hyperlinks. So if that was the case, there were no marks given. So it was not, the idea was not to do it manually, but to do it through one movement through the replace command. So that was that for the United States President versus version 1.